This meeting will now come to order. This is the Board of Zoning Appeals on this November 29, 2011, and I call this meeting to order. We do have a quorum. We have all 5 members present. Craig, welcome to the board.
Thank you.
Has everyone had a chance to read the minutes of the last meeting? Would someone care to make a motion to accept the minutes as they are printed?
I'll make a motion to accept as submitted.
Motion made. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Minutes are approved as printed. We have 2 items of old business here carried forth from the last 2 meetings. Item number 1 is to appeal the decision of the building official for B&B disposal, 237/245 Cheney Road, tax map 28, parcels 10 and 11, Joe and Sarah Boner. Item number 2, appeal the decision of the building official, Joe's Place, 237/245 Cheney Road, tax map 28, parcels 10 and 11, Joe and Sarah Boner. Now, as we take testimony on these items, we will consider both items 1 and 2 together and taking the testimony, but when it comes to a vote, we will vote on each one of those individually. Also, anybody that will be coming forward during this session to testify and also to give thoughts either pro or against will be asked to be administered an oath by Mr. Richardson here. Ms. Constanzo, am I pronouncing that right?
Close enough.
Close enough. Good. Would you present the 2 items, please?
Certainly. Members of the board, the Codes Department received a complaint on May 18th, 2011 regarding the property located at 237 and 245 Cheney Boulevard. The complainant noted that there was trash, junked cars, some other items about the property that didn't appear to be in the correct zone. So, after receiving the complaint, the building official located the tax records for the 2 properties, and the tax records indicated that there were 2 businesses operating on the properties, B&B Disposal, which is a garbage service, and Joe's Place, which is a salvage yard. The tax records went back to 1998 and 2004, respectively, for when the business licenses were issued for the two businesses there. When the building official received that information, he sent a memo to the city planner to inquire whether those 2 uses were allowed in that zoning district. The city planner at the time, Grant Green, responded on June 6th of 2011 that the property is zoned agriculture and that both land use activities, the garbage service and the salvage yard, are not permitted in an agricultural zone. He also indicated that those 2 businesses were not allowed in that zone back when the business licenses were issued in 2004 and 1998, respectively. At this point, the building official sent a cease and desist letter to the owners of the property and stated that there had been a complaint received and that the properties are both not in compliance with the city's zoning ordinance. At that point, the property owners appealed the decision of the building official, Mr. Beard, per section 8.070 of the city's zoning ordinance. And that's where we are today.
Okay.
And I suppose I should add that the owners of the property state that they have been operating both businesses since before the city's zoning ordinance was in effect, which would essentially make them a legal grandfathered non-conforming use. So that's the question at hand tonight.
Would you clarify the grandfather item, please?
Any land use activities that were in operation before the city adopted the zoning ordinance are considered legal but non-conforming with the current regulations. And any grandfathered land use activity is allowed to continue until it ceases operation for a period of 30 months. It used to be a 1 year, but the TCA was amended in the last several years. So it has to, the business has to actually completely cease for 30 months. And when that happens, that operation may not go back into effect in that zone.
And what's the date, the cutoff date for the grandfather? What is the cutoff date? When they had to be in business?
Well, the oldest zoning ordinance that I can find is from 1981. So it would have to have been in continuous operation up until 1981. So that's the one I have here.
You mentioned also the licenses were issued, did you say in 1998, 2004?
Right, according to the tax records in City Hall, let's see, the garbage service was issued a business license in 1998, and the salvage yard was issued one in 2004. Those are the oldest records that Mr. Beard was able to locate.
Okay. Is it my understanding there that the city has no documentation to prove that these businesses were in operation prior to that time, either by license, permit, utility bills, anything?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Would the representatives council care to step forward, please?
Thank you.
Is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Glad we have everybody here tonight.
Yes.
That's a good thing.
Mr. Chairman, Costa,
Glad to have you with
be
us, Mr.
sworn in,
Cox.
please.
Yes. Mhm.
Mr. George, will you please raise your right hands? Do you swear or promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Philip George. I practice law in Smyrna at 511 Enon Springs Road East. Your staff has done a good job of outlining the issues here. She stated that this seems to be a legal non-conforming use and subject to the Grandfather Act. Your zoning ordinance was approved in 1990, and in there it states that a lawful non-conforming uses, buildings, and structures existing at the item, I should say time, of the passage of this ordinance or any amendment thereto shall be allowed to remain subject to the following provisions. And then it outlines several provisions, and one of those provisions is that they must continue they must stay in continuous use. And as I'm sorry I didn't get her name, but the staff, Costanza has said that apparently it's 30 months. I was thinking it was 1 year. That was some old law I was looking at, and probably in this case I was looking at. But it apparently now is 30 months. But this business has been in continuous use since the 60s, actually. Not with these particular people. There was a couple that owned a business there that had a salvage yard. And then Mr. and Mrs., it was Robert E. Moore and his wife Nora owned this piece of property, and that's where my clients, the Boners, got the property sometime in the 70s. If I could give you just a little background on this, I have a little bit more information than I had last time I appeared here, and if I could approach and hand out.
Yes, please. Yes.
I've got a copy for each of you this time. This is an affidavit from Mr. Boner, and there's one from the former mayor.
Thank you.
And I have something else I want to show you too, but I'm going to go through this affidavit. In this affidavit, it shows that Mr. and Mrs. Boner, Mr. Boner and his wife owned the businesses at 237 and 245 Cheney Boulevard. And in the 70s, this was owned by Mr. Robert E. and Nora Moore. They had a salvage operation. It used to be Cedar Grove Road, and it changed later to Cheney Boulevard. And it says that he began helping Mr. Moore with his operation sometime in the 70s, and then in 78, he completely took over the interest of Mr. and Mrs. Moore to the salvage yard. And then in November of 1987, he opened Bright Star Disposal, which is an operation that hauls and disposes of household garbage. And then in 1998, Bright Star became B&B Disposal. That's when he and now Ms. Sarah Boner became partners in this business. And that's when it became B&B. And then it concludes by saying it's been a continuous operation. The garbage disposal business has been continuous operation since 1987, and the salvage operation in continuous business under his direction since 1978. I also have attached to that the affidavit of Mike Webb. He was formerly mayor of Laverne, and he served on the Board of Aldermen and participated in the passage of the Laverne zoning ordinance in 1990. I wanted to get the mayor, but the mayor at that time is now deceased. That was Mayor Moore. No relation to the other Moores, I don't think. Anyway, he stated in there at the time of this passage of the zoning ordinance that he knew that Mr. Boner was in business on Cheney Boulevard where he operated a salvage yard and garbage disposal business, and that he had been in business at that location for many years. He didn't know how many years, but he did know that he had been in business there for quite some time. And finally, I have attached to this, they're not like a lot of people that keep I kept records from the time I've been practicing law till today. I was 26 years I've got all my files, every last one of them. I must be some kind of a pack rat. Not everybody keeps business records like that. In fact, Laverne doesn't keep the business records to show evidence that they were in business at that time. The county only keeps them for 5 years. So there's no records that you can find that will help substantiate them, except for one thing that they did bring forward, and that is their phone bill. And lo and behold, up there in the right-hand corner, if you'll see, the control date is 11/4/87. That's when B&B started their business. So I had never noticed that about my phone bill either, but apparently that's how they keep track of that. But that shows that they were in business at that time. Now I want to read a little bit of a case for you. I read some of this last time, but for the benefit of Mr. Pollock, he wasn't here last time. I want to read just a few things about this case. It is Bramlett versus Coffee County Planning Commission. A similar case to this. That had more to do with apartment houses, but it's a very instructive case on the case law relating to this issue that we have before us today. And it states here that a use of property that exists prior to the enactment of a zoning ordinance which prohibits that use is commonly referred to in zoning parlance as a non-conforming use, as your staff has already told you. And a non-conforming use is grandfathered and thus exempt from restriction under the later enacted zoning ordinance when the use is specifically exempted from the ordinance's application on the ground that the property was being used that way when the zoning ordinance took effect. In other words, the bottom line is if they're doing that legally or illegally, if they're doing this business at the time that the zoning ordinance takes place, then they're grandfathered in. And that's the case here, and I think that's clearly the case. There's hundreds of people who could testify that they've done business with these people at that address and their predecessors. Unfortunately, the Moores are no longer with us, and they couldn't testify, as neither could former Mayor Moore. And one of the things that you run into, and every planning commission, every BZA runs into this, whenever you zone property, it's already in some kind of use. So that's where you run into constitutional problems. And obviously, the legislature has provided for this, and the owners of this property have a constitutional right to continue the use of their property. And this board, the city of Laverne, simply cannot deprive constitutionally and legally Mr. and Mrs. Boner from operating their business. They've got a legal right to operate that business, and if this board or any other agency of this city saw fit to discontinue their use, they'd be walking on shaky ground, as the song says. This statute protects people like Mr. and Mrs. Boner, protects everybody in this city who may have some kind of a business. And just because some people don't like this business anymore, you can't just say you're not going to be able to run this business in town. You can't single them out anymore. You can single out any other salvage yard or any other business that you don't like in this town. And it's not a popularity contest. It doesn't matter if everybody in the city of Laverne comes down here and complains about this place. They have a constitutional right to run this business. Now, this has already been discussed by this body, excuse me, not this body, by the city once before. In 2004, there was, this came up. There were some code violation complaints about the Boner property, and it was dismissed as it was grandfathered property per the mayor. One final thing I want to show you here, and I didn't copy this for everybody because these don't copy worth a flip. These are aerial photographs, and I showed this to everybody last time. I've got the other ones this time.
Okay.
If I could start with Mr. Pollock here, since you didn't get to see these before, and let me explain what I've got here. This is the big picture right here. It's dated, 10/17/74. This is an aerial photograph taken of this area. You can see part of Percy Priest Lake there. This is the subject property here, and this is not the best picture in the world, but as you can see, there are dozens and dozens of vehicles on this property here. And if you look at this final one, this is a current picture of this neighborhood. As you can see here, this is Cheney Road, and this is the neighborhood that now encroaches, well, not encroaches, but abuts their property. So if you would just take a look at those and pass them on down. I apologize, I couldn't make a copy for everybody. Like I said, they don't copy well. I do have one clearer, it's a better quality photograph of that area, but it does show, this is from 1974, it does show all those vehicles. And if you'll notice from that photograph, there are no houses on that northern border. Or I guess, excuse me, that may be the western border. I'm turned around. Anyway, the area in question is a salvage operation there, as you can tell from all the vehicles. And there are no houses around there. These houses were built after this business was well underway. So I understand the neighbors' concerns. They bought houses next to something that they don't like anymore. I don't know if they didn't like it then and thought it might go away. Don't know what they were thinking. But this business was there when they bought their place. And this body hasn't done anything wrong to these people. I would say to you in all candor, I think that the city of Laverne has done something bad to this neighborhood. In the first place, when you build a neighborhood, you have to take into consideration what is around it. And when they allowed this subdivision to be built, they did not provide for a buffer. They didn't provide for anything to screen this operation. And the bottom line is residential property, they don't want to abut a business. It's as simple as that. Everybody knows that. But for whatever reason at the time, the city did not do anything about that. And that does a disservice to anybody who builds there, and somebody did build there, and these people bought their houses there with knowing right over that fence there is a salvage operation and a garbage disposal operation. And I think in hindsight's always 20/20, but the city could have done a better job at the time that this subdivision was allowed to be put next to this thing. And one final thing I'll say, when neighbors complain, it's the duty of the politicians and the people who run this town to say, I'm sorry, this is a legal non-conforming use, and we can't do anything about that. We can't change that business. It's up to the people that run this city to tell these people the truth. And don't get them all stirred up and get everybody flocking down here and get neighbors fighting with neighbors over something that they have complete knowledge is legal. And the operation of Mr. and Mrs. Boner there is legal. It is a non-conforming use, but it is nevertheless legal. And they have the right to continue that by the Constitution. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Sir, do you have any documentation where you indicated that in 2004 that there was an official meeting at that time that stated that was grandfathered?
All I have was the minutes, and the minutes just show that that was one of the things that was considered. But there is no, I did not turn up any minutes that said what they actually did. Actually, that came under the administrator's comments, if my memory serves me correctly. I'm not sure it was actually voted on by the entire body. I think it was just something that was reported that did not need action. At least that's my understanding.
Reference my earlier question about any documentation the city may or may not have predating, what was it, year 1981, 1990. How about, do you have anything for Bright Star disposal? Will you provide a copy of this affidavit?
No, sir, I was not.
Okay. Does the board have any questions at this time?
I've got a couple questions. Mr. George, Ms. Costanzo has a zoning ordinance that's got a date of 1981 on it, which she showed, right? You have that with you?
Signed by AC Puckett, sir.
So, is there any way you can account for the difference? You've been using this 1990 date. You've got the affidavit from Mr. Webb about 1990. Is there any explanation for that difference?
I don't know the difference between the 1990 and the 1981 zoning ordinance. I do know it was Mayor Puckett who signed that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I've talked to Mayor Puckett about this, former Mayor Puckett, and he remembers this business being in operation at the time that was done in 1981.
Is there a reason that you chose to use the 1990?
That's the one that's in effect now. It supersedes anything that was enacted before that.
But if there was, if the property was, so the 1987, well, anything, I guess my question is anything prior to 1981, if this zoning ordinance includes zoning that would make that, if it, excuse me, if it would have been illegal after 1980, excuse me, after 1981, then it would not be legal nonconforming use, correct?
No, it was a legal nonconforming use in 1981. There had been, here's part of the problem that you run into. There was a salvage business going on there since the 60s, maybe even the 50s, but I know the 60s because we've got photographs of the area from 1969. But we know, we know from anecdotal information that there was an operation going on in the 60s. And then Mr. and Mrs. Green had the business in the 70s. And that's when Mr. Boner started working there. He actually started working in the yard for Mr. Moore, and then in 1978 he took over the operations. I think Mr. Moore might have had a stroke at the time, and his health was bad, so he took over the operations of it in 1978.
This affidavit from Mr. Boner says the garbage disposal operation has been in continuous business since 1987.
That's correct.
The salvage operation since 1978. So if those two things are separate, if we're considering the garbage disposal separate from the salvage operation, has the garbage disposal operation been in continuous operation prior to 1981?
That I don't know. We'll have to ask Mr. Boner about that.
And Ms. Costanzo, do you know how it was zoned in 1981, this area?
I do not have a copy of the paper map that was adopted in 1981.
So we don't know.
I don't know. But according to if it were zoned agriculture, if it were zoned anything other than I believe industrial, it would not have been allowed in 1981.
Right.
So.
And I mean, we'd have to ask Mr. Boner about this, but you're saying we don't know if prior to 1981 the garbage disposal business was an operation?
I do know for sure about the salvage operation. I'm not 100% sure about the garbage disposal operation.
I also just wanted to clarify the business licenses that are included in here that the city has are dated 98 for B&B, 2004 for the salvage operation. The 98 license seems to match up with a name change, Bright Star to B&B Disposal. What's why 2004? Is that also a name change?
That may be when the state changed their regulations. At some point in the 2000s, the state started requiring them to have licenses, so they had to go get a license where they did not have to have one before. I'm not sure if it became exactly how that worked. It may have just become more stringent than it was before, but for some reason, because the state of Tennessee required it, they had to reacquire a license or do it in a different way than it was originally.
Okay. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
The TDS bill you produced, why is there discrepancy in the PO box?
I'm sorry?
Between the PO box on your bill shows 1582, the TDS bill. The PO box for the license is different. What's the reason behind that?
I have no idea.
In 2004, you were recalling about the states changing the licensing. I don't recall that. I do not recall the changes of requirements in 2004. So, other concerns that I have is the Differences in the, on the property tax information of the actual properties located or identified on the property information to the application that's been presented. They seem to be all different locations. I'm a bit concerned what that's about, if you know anything about that.
Different I'm not sure I understand your question.
If you look at the parcel number and the tax ID statement on each one, it gives different locations, and it differs to what you're referring to in the application.
I'm not sure. All I know is that they've been in continuous operation at that location. I'm not sure what box numbers have changed and what else may have changed.
Well, the map, control, group, and parcel are different.
I can't answer that question.
Going back to in 2008 and 2009, when the city expended a large amount of time and effort to do a rezoning map, your client indicated last month that they were unaware of that.
Right.
The licensing for both businesses appear to be inconsistent with what you're indicating.
I'm not sure what you're thinking is inconsistent.
Inconsistent as far as the address, the location, and the names on the licenses.
I'm not sure what all has changed. I do know that Cedar Grove Road became Cheney Road, which is now Cheney Boulevard, so things change. The nomenclature changes.
The change of ownership happened, you indicate, in the 70s, as well as in 2006. The affidavit states that obviously Brightstar became B&B Disposal when I bought my partner Sarah Bowen, who married me in 2006. So we don't have any indication or any information on Brightstar in 1998.
Brightstar is, that was the name of the business that he, that's the name he gave the business when he, and I guess it was
The affidavit says November 1987.
1987, excuse me, November 4th, 1987 to be exact.
So
Yeah,
you have
I recall it.
a name change, number one, and number two, a ownership change as well.
Yeah, there was no ownership change, just a name change. And that's the thing that you have to keep in mind. They can change the name as many times as they want to. They can sell it to somebody else. They can sell it to somebody tomorrow. That person will be grandfathered in.
Any other questions by the board members?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I will now open a public hearing. Anyone who wishes to be heard either for or against either of these two items, come forward, please.
Sir, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Tim Benson, and my address is 2037 Summit Lane, Laverne. Appreciate the opportunity to express some of the reasonings why I'm here, and clear up a couple of things that were said in the previous meetings. I've been in the last couple of meetings here, and I really appreciate the efforts that you gentlemen have on you to enforce and protect our community. And I have to confess, the last time I was here, I did not have a copy of the ordinance, but since then I've taken the opportunity to get educated on this and to review it and to see what we're dealing with. And my wife has gotten after me because I've spent too much time doing this, taking time off of work, and she asked me why I'm so passionate about this. And two things that I've come up with is that I am in the life safety business. I'm in the fire alarm industry, and it's also codes driven. NFPA 72, Life Safety 101, directs what I can put in a commercial or residential business as far as fire alarms go. And so I know a little bit on my side of the industry about codes. And I know just recently, one of the things that happened in metropolitan Nashville, I say recently, it's been 10 years. Always, I've been in this industry for 20 years, always it has been required by those two codes that apartment complexes with 11 or more units attached that share the same breezeway, that they have a fire alarm system. But in metropolitan, Davidson County metropolitan, this was never enforced because they didn't want the false alarms. Until about 10 years ago, tragically, NHC had a horrible fire where people were killed. And then shortly after that, in Madison, there was 2 little girls that were killed in another apartment fire when the city said, wait a minute, and they started looking at the codes and they saw that it was required for fire alarms, but it had not been enforced. So they made the effort at that time to go back to these apartment complexes, which were numerous, that didn't have fire alarm systems, because this was a life safety issue, and has now enforced the codes and made them install fire alarm systems. They were also brought to a civil lawsuit and saying, wait a minute, we were grandfathered in. I mean, we got occupancy. How can you force us to do that? And basically what came back, and they lost the civil lawsuit, that there's no more such thing as grandfathering when it comes to life safety. And they are being forced to financially put up the money to put fire alarm systems because it's a life safety issue. You can't buck that. You can't avoid that. So that's one thing I think that's driving my passion on this. The other thing that's driving my passion on this is that the first house that we bought, my wife and I bought, was in a rural county similar to this. It was in Lebanon, Maine. There was an independently owned dump garbage disposal that was being operated right down the road from my house. And I took my garbage there, but nobody was regulating the garbage that was going in there. Nobody knew what was going on. I knew when I got there, when I'd bring my trash several times, that there would be black smoke billowing up, not from on top, but from under the ground. So there was all kinds of things that were going in the ground that nobody knew about. And my wife and I had discussed it. We'd take a glass of water, put it on the nightstand, and in the morning you'd have this little rainbow ring around it. And you know, we thought about it, but I never thought about it until about, let's see, between 5 and 10 years later, because we had moved to Tennessee. My son was born in Lebanon, Maine. My daughter was born there. When we got to Tennessee, I was living in Smithville. My son was, at 5 years old, was diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma and was given 1% chance to live. So as a father, as a parent, the things that you go back in your mind is, where could this have happened? How could this have happened? What affected my son's immune systems that would allow a 5-year-old to have cancer? And I mean, it could have been anything. It could have been when we moved to Louisiana. I'm not saying it was from this dump, but I'm telling you, my mind goes there, and I'm wondering. And I'm never going to have an answer to that. And so this is a passion for me. And one of the things that I would like to clear up, it's not communities arguing. It's not, this is not a personal attack against the Boners. I'm sure they're good people. I'm sure they want to and you know, if they wanted to operate a wedding business there, I would not be concerned. What concerns me is that this is a health issue. This is a safety issue. This is the welfare of our community issue that I'm concerned with. It's not personal. When we moved into that area, at the time, it looked like a salvage yard. That's all that I knew that it was, okay? Because I could tell by the automobiles that had just been abandoned there that have no way of functioning. And that's one thing, okay? But in the wintertime when we moved, the smell is not there. In the summertime when I walk down the hill, it hits you. And it's like, wait a minute, what is this? And it wasn't that way the first time we moved in. Something changed. And the only thing that I can say has changed is that they're now bringing garbage. They're not just using to park garbage trucks like we heard last year, but they're bringing garbage in and they're sorting through it to recycle it, and that's a good intention. But when I talk to companies like Waste Management, and I explained what they're doing, they said, well, then they come under a different regulations. They're not just a garbage disposal business. What they're doing is they're processing garbage. So that's completely different. But that's, again, what the issue is. This is a health issue. And whenever I looked at in the codes, section 1.0.40, the purpose of this that was written was to protect those things. And that's what y'all's responsibility is to enforce this code and to protect the community, our health, and the property value. And in fact, I just highlighted the 3 areas under that section. It would be Section A, about enhancing the character and the stability of the residential business. Then Section C talks about conserving the property value. That's why this ordinance was written, that you are to enforce so it conserves the property value. But also, too, F is that responsible for providing adequate light, air, privacy, and sanitation. And then the last thing was Section I. It says encouraging the most appropriate uses of land. And that's where I'm concerned, and that's why I would say more than this is a non-conforming use, this is an illegal non-conforming use. And the reason I state that is what Christina has already said, is this has been zoned agricultural since 1981, I believe she stated. As agricultural, you're not supposed to operate this kind of business on agricultural land. And I can understand. I'd like to blame the city planners because I know the developer had to bring plans up here, and someone had to look at the zoning map to say, is this going to require a buffer zone between this residential area and this agricultural area? No, but it's not being used for an agricultural use. It's being used for a commercial use, for a use that this ordinance already says in section 4.0.9, all of the detriment that this type of business has on the community. So yes, it's non-conforming, but it's illegal because it's on agricultural land. And as a city planner, if I'm looking at the drawings, well, here's residential, here's agricultural, there's no buffer zone required. But if you know what's being operated there, and if it was truly listed as a commercial business or zoned that way, then there would be a 300-foot buffer that's required between that and our community. And not just our community, but if you look at the map again, on all four sides of that property is residential. Not just our community. On the other side, there's a small house there that is a residential property. On this side, there's houses on Cheney Road. And on the back side of Cheney Road, there's houses. Across the street, there's houses. This is one island there that is a health hazard. And from what you describe in section 4.0.9, I'm sorry, 4.0.9.0, the standards for an automobile wrecking, junk, and salvage yard, it states very clearly that it's decidedly detrimental effect upon the surrounding properties, that it creates problems of noise, of dust, traffic, health hazards, and may adversely affect the property value of the, just by its general appearance, it affects property value. And I can tell you, we were not arguing, we were stating that these were problems last time we met. I hadn't read this. Well, you know what? Y'all have identified the problems with this kind of business operating next to a residential property. Y'all have already done the work. You know it's not, well, is it really, or are the community just upset? Are we just arguing? Are we just mean people? It's not that. Y'all have stated this, not us. This is the problem with this kind of business operating in an agricultural, illegally, next to a residential property. And then, okay, the thing that I read, again, going through this, you talk about signage that is, this ordinance required new requirements for signage. And then it also identified signs that were in place before this, okay, that if they were in place before this ordinance, then they were to be considered non-conforming signs, if they were lawful signs. If they weren't lawful signs, the signs were taken down, gotten rid of. That's it. And that's the same situation that we're in here. This is not, if it's on agricultural business, it's not legal. As far as, I mentioned the buffer zone, I mentioned the health hazards, and I mentioned the non-conforming use. The thing that I'm questioning, again, is not their character. This is not the situation. I'm questioning B&B operating on an agricultural property next to residential. Is it a health hazard? Y'all have stated in the codes that it's a health hazard. And they are, if you read the codes, the very first part, yes, if y'all determine that it's illegal, then it's up to y'all to look within this code. If you're going to continue to let them operate, then y'all need to set down the requirements that how they are going to be able to operate and not affect our community adversely. And I don't know how to do that, because you can't put a 300 buffer foot in between our houses unless you tear down some houses, or they're not going to have enough room to park a garbage truck. There's not that much land there. So that's basically, you got a hard job. But the way I look at it is that this is a detriment to the community. This is not enhancing property value. This is not a safety. I mean, this is definitely a safety issue for families that are there. Who knows what's going in the water as far as there, because nobody's regulating. Nobody's looking after it. So, and finally, the last thing that I would state, because I am a concerned citizen, I live in Laverne. This is where I plan to die. This is the last home we were going to buy, is here. I'm concerned as a citizen here that if it's allowed to continue to operate, that you're opening up a wide door for the city of Laverne to be sued because of the life safety concerns that I've mentioned, that are mentioned in your codes. It's documented in your codes that this type of business causes. I didn't mention all of it. It says that it can cause vermins to breed. We heard several community members mention about the just infestation of rats and mice and mosquitoes and flies. Well, this type of business breeds that. So how can you let that go as an island surrounded by residential property? I don't see how you can do that. So you're opening yourselves up for lawsuits. You're also just in the last couple of years, I'll bring it up, our property taxes have gone up. And there's been no consideration to the property that we're next to that this ordinance says will have a detrimental effect on the value of my property. Why is my property value going up? They're allowed to continue to operate, which is causing my value of my home to go down. I can name you people who have had to walk away from their homes because they could not sell it. There's vacant houses sitting there now, not even rented out because of the property that's behind there. It is obvious it's a detrimental effect to our community. That's not even an argument. So those are the things that I wanted to bring up.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Can we ask some questions?
Certainly.
When did you move in?
4 years ago.
At that time, was there both a garbage disposal and salvage operation in operation at that time?
They were, to my knowledge, they were picking up garbage and getting rid of it. I noticed that, like I said, when I was walking just for health issues, that the smell just, especially in the summer, and I thought, wait a minute, this is crazy. And I finally called Channel 4 because, again, I know I'm not a code enforcer, and I thought maybe they could. I thought it would bring attention to the area. It's not a personal thing against, that's why I didn't call them to say, hey, your business stinks. I mean, I didn't think that would be a good neighbor either. But at that time, in fact, if you looked at Google right now, you would see these green, huge bins that they're sorting trash in. That wasn't there when I moved in. They've actually expanded the business and expanded the amounts of what they're bringing in and what they're doing. That was not that way when we moved in at all. So, and that's really what's concerning me, is whenever the attorney says that it's a non-conforming use and every time it sells, somebody else can come in and this can get bigger and bigger and bigger, and nobody's regulating it.
Is it your understanding that when your house was built, there was a garbage disposal and salvage operation in operation at the time your home?
No, I didn't even, our house was probably 3 years old before I bought it, so no, I had no idea.
Okay, thank
All right.
you.
Thank you. And thank you again. I'm serious when I say I know you have a hard job, and I appreciate the work that y'all do and the efforts that y'all put into this.
Thank you. Yes. Yes.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Deborah Hewen, 431 Randall Lane, Laverne, Tennessee.
Thank you.
First off, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself, not as in-depth as some people would, but just to give you a little taste of where I'm getting my information from. I obtained my real estate license in 1995 and worked full-time as a real estate agent up until 2010. The market had declined, so I retired my license temporarily, but I still keep up with the market. I still keep up with the goings-on in the city that I live in, since my largest investment is my home. Back in the mid-2000s, I was showing a family from Nissan that was upgrading from a starter home properties in the Smyrna and Laverne area. When I do this, I would pull up houses that met a minimum of what they wanted in their price range. And I did come upon a couple of houses that exceeded well above what they should have been worth in that market, which was good back in the mid-2000s. Now, I told my clients about it. I emailed them. They said, oh, well, we want to see them. We want to see why, you know, it's such a good deal, why it's such a good price. We looked at them, and there was a great difference in the size and the types of materials used in the houses that they were qualified for, and the houses on Summit Drive that I was showing them that were priced below market. When we got there, the houses were beautiful, upstairs, downstairs. We looked all around, liked everything, beautiful houses, great prices. And I mean, I was even ready to sell my house and move and buy one until we stepped outside. We saw what was in the back. We saw junk cars. We saw a junkyard, so to speak. It was obvious to anybody what it was. I called the agent. I asked her what's going on, and she told us that there was a junkyard in operation, that it had been there for years, and she didn't know what they were going to do. I said, are they going to sell out? Are they going to move? Is the builder going to build there? No, we don't have any information according to that. It would be up to the city to do anything about that. We can't do anything about it, but we have discounted the prices of the houses, plus we have, you know, we can even throw in some extra upgrades for your client if they decide to buy the house. Okay, my clients loved the house. They didn't like the location. They had a choice of getting a discounted price on a house that was in a bad location. We all make choices in life. Sometimes we make good choices, sometimes we make bad choices. I feel bad for the people who bought the houses on Summit. You know, I wouldn't want to have a junkyard in my backyard, but it is what it is. I've looked all over the internet. I've researched through some of my old real estate books. You know, it is a grandfathered in business and operation that's been in effect longer than some of us have been alive. Not me, but some of us. But I'll tell you, you know, you can't, just because you don't like how something looks or smells, they're not hurting anybody. Nobody's shown any hard evidence that they're hurting anybody or caused any harm. They grew some cucumbers this summer. She gave me some cucumbers this summer. I took them home, chopped them up, fed them to my family. We're fine. We didn't get sick. As far as I know, she grew them in the middle of the dump. You know, I'm still healthy. And I mean, you've got to realize that when somebody buys a house next to a farm, there are going to be cows. You know, there's going to be cow manure. There's going to be chickens. You know, you buy a house next to a school, you're going to have kids screaming. You're going to have traffic. You're going to have mothers doing 15 miles per hour in front of your house and blocking your driveway. These are things that you look at when you go to make a decision to buy a home. You know, we all have to make these choices, and sometimes we regret it later on. You know, I'm sure a lot of people have regrets for buying their houses in certain places. But I'm in Lake Forest. Do I regret that? Oh, God, yes. But what can I do? I can only hang on, because even with my best marketing techniques, I can't get my equity out of my house right now. I have to wait for the market to change. I have to sit. It's like when you buy a bad stock, you know. You can either ride the roller coaster out or you can take a loss and sell it. You know, it's a choice that you have to make when you buy a house. And I don't personally know any real estate agent that would show the houses on Summit Drive back when they were being built or after and not see outside, out back, and see what was in the backyard, basically. You know, whether it smells, whether it doesn't. I don't know. I can't remember if it smelled or not. But it was there, and it was obvious that, you know, there were no plans of anything going anywhere. It was what it was. And I know that you guys have a lot of hard decisions to make that will affect the lives of people and their ownership and the land and the homes that they bought. And I think it's the greatest American right. It's the privilege to buy some property and have a home on it. But it's also a buyer's responsibility to make a wise decision. And this business didn't come in after these houses were developed, this land was built. That builder knew what was there. That builder knew what he was up against. He was ready to discount those homes, and discount them he did. And the market is down all over. It is not just up there. We have houses sitting empty all over Lake Forest, and we don't have a dump. We have a lake. It's the market. That's the way it is. Prices have shot down. I can't even make a living as a realtor anymore right now. My license is on hold. That was a big step for me. This is serious business. And I mean, I just hope that you take into consideration what your legal duties are. Please don't get our city into a lawsuit, because just everything I know from land ownership and the rights of the lands and everything, this is a legal non-conforming use that has to be dealt with. You have to let it go until they decide they no longer want to operate that business. If they were to do something that caused a health hazard, can code step in? Yes. Can you take their right to operate that business on that land away from them? No, you can't. And if you try to, I am so afraid our city will suffer for it with legal fees. Please don't do that. Please, you know, whether you like it or not, do what's right. Follow the law. And I'll let you have my paper if you want to read some of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I only have one copy.
That's fine.
I've got some things out.
Thank you. Any other speakers, please? Yes, ma'am. Step forward, please.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Will you please state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Marty Kosowski, K-O as in Sam, O-W-S-K-I. I live at 2306 Discovery Court in Laverne, Tennessee.
Thank you.
And I live in Arbor Heights subdivision. I have lived there for 6 years. I have never once smelt B&B disposal. I drive by there probably minimum 10 times a week. Am I happy that B&B has cleaned up the front yard and moved the cars behind the fence? I am happy they did that. You drive by there now. If you didn't know it was there, you wouldn't know it was there. What they're doing now, it's my understanding when they came into the recycling, they're recycling and taking the stuff to the dumpsters to recycle. And the other garbage they're putting in the garbage. Your water problems, folks, I've lived here 6 years. I turned my faucet on, took a drink of water, and I don't even feed that water to my dog.
Excuse me, ma'am. Would you address the board, please?
I do not, well, I just want them to understand that the water problems they're having, I've had for 6 years since I've been here. And I know everybody in Laverne talks about the water. There's a horrible taste to it. So I don't think B&B Disposal is responsible for the entire city of Laverne having bad tasting water. I have a per water filter. I go through dozens of them because I won't even feed it to my dogs. I feel sorry for the problems that they had. But if they lived near a dump site or a salvage yard or whatever before and had problems, why would they move to Tennessee and buy near one? I think that that they've improved the property tremendously. I have never smelt anything from that property. And I'd like to have you give them a chance. I don't think that property is being used illegally. I don't know what happened here 10, 20 years ago because I've only been here for 6.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
I think that we had someone back here. Did I see a hand in the back there, please? Okay, ma'am. Good.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
You please state your name and address for the record.
Myla Ray Benson, 2037 Summit Lane.
Thank you.
Okay, we bought our house, everybody's questioning it, in the wintertime. The fence was completely up, so we were at the top of the hill, so we didn't see anything but a fence. We had no idea that there even was a salvage company there. When we first moved in, we didn't have the smell. We didn't have any of that. My husband and I walk. Maybe this other lady doesn't walk. So she, you know, if you're in a car, you might not smell it. But about 4 years later, I noticed the terrible smell and the flies and all of the other things that we were talking about. And it was about the time when a newspaper article came out that they were processing, they had upgraded and they were now going to recycle, and she was out there, and I'm all for recycling. But that's when the problem started, was when they started keeping the garbage on site, taking 3 or 4 days to go through everything and recycle. Tim mentioned that that is what we were told is called processing, and that is not legally called a dump. It's now upgraded to a processing center. There's all sorts of health regulations that a processing center has to go through. And that's what we're basically talking about here, is they have upgraded. And this is when those dump containers, I guess the health department required those so that the garbage couldn't be all over the ground during the 3 or 4 days that they took to process it. For us, we would love the Boners to be able to keep B&B and use it like it was before. Pick up the garbage, bring it to the dump, and park their vehicles. But to do a processing center, that is a totally different ballgame. That is totally different for our community, for the health problems and everything else. And I think that's the bottom line, is would you guys have the authority to contain what they're doing to be a disposal? Is this property allowed to be a dump for 3, 4, 5 days to accumulate the mosquitoes and just all the other problems that we're having now? I think that's, you know, what needs to be addressed more than just the grandfathering in. Does the grandfathering in let them still be a salvage and a disposal, but where they've ramped it up to this other, is that anything that can be addressed?
Thank you very much.
Ms. Benson, can I ask a question? What's the date that you're saying the processing started?
I read the article. It was in one of the local little fly papers, probably about 3 years ago. But you probably could ask the Boners when they started doing that.
And your understanding is that was a different use, that there hadn't been garbage there for periods
Yeah.
of time prior to that?
No.
Okay.
They even said they parked the trucks, and, you know, that was the only thing that you smelled. But the change came when they started to recycle. And, you know, and the article said it was so that they could keep the price down for B&B for their customers that they were willing to recycle. So they're making more money on that end. But, you know, and that's good ecology, so but it's not good for our neighborhood.
Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? Yes, sir.
Please raise your right hand. You swear or promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Sure, I do.
Will you please state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is David Faulkner, Falknor. I reside at 2027 Summit Lane, Laverne, Tennessee. We've been a resident there since 2005, and we were told by the realtors that the city was going to do something about the property there. But as we got to know the owners, you know, we've never had any problems, no smells, no infestations whatsoever. I did find a mouse, but it was a field mouse. We also live right across the way from some woods where varmints do live in the woods, along with flies. And there's standing water back in there, so you're getting mosquitoes. Since then, you know, I don't walk as often as Tim and Mila do, but I do get out and walk periodically. Not once have I noticed an odor. I don't run my AC in my van. I run on that, you know, that 260, 2 windows down, 60 miles an hour. Not through the neighborhoods or anything, but I do, you know, as I'm coming through, not once have I noticed an odor coming from the facility, whether they're in the winter, spring, or the summers. And my wife and I will sit periodically on our deck. You can see our home where the blue block is, go up, and we're in one of those green where next to that open field is. We have a beautiful view, and I've enjoyed sitting out there at night, you know, watching the fireflies. No, I've never been bothered by the other insects during the summer, nor by the smell. I don't, you know, I have nothing personal against Joe or Sarah. You know, if they get moved out, that we, you know, no skin off my hide. But they have been here way before my wife and I moved in there. We knew what was being operated there, and we have never had any problems with them. And they've told us right up front, this is the way we, you know, our operation here, and we've been friends. Their daughter has been over our home a couple of times, so they've just been really great neighbors, and they've done what they can to take care. We've had our water tested about 2-3 years ago. No problems with the water, but I do run a filter on my water lines into my, but we do consume. So I do thank the board's time.
Thank you. I didn't see any other hands. Is that correct? Okay, I will now close the public hearing since there are no other speakers.
Before we do that, could I ask if Mr. and Mrs. Boner would be willing to answer some questions? Is that okay, Bob?
Yes, certainly.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Sarah Boner, 237 Cheney Boulevard.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Is that all right if I ask you a question?
Oh.
Yeah, I'm up here for questions. I don't really have anything to say.
I wondered, first of all, in this affidavit that Joe signed, he has 2 separate dates for the continuous operation of the salvage business and the garbage business. The garbage dating back, he says, in continuous business since '87. Is that the start date for that business? Do you know?
It was the start date for Bright Star Disposal, yes. There were previous garbage disposal companies there, but they were not owned by Joe.
Okay.
There was Smyrna Disposal before that. There was Dixie, ran out of there for a little while, and then the Warwick family parked their trucks out there in like late 60s, early 70s.
And during that time, was there ever a stop in the business for 30 months or more?
Oh, no, no.
Okay. Does the salvage operation also date back further than '78, or is that when it started?
Oh, it's way older than 78, yes. Yes, there's a gentleman in Smyrna that remembers it back to 1951 and has an interesting story behind that too, but it's for him to tell, so.
So it's your understanding that both of those businesses have been in operation at least since the 60s and before?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Ms. Benson mentioned this change in processing in 2008. Is that something that's changed now?
Processing, it's not processing. We do have some customers that have decided to save cans, paper, and cardboard to help with recycling processes to help keep their bills from going up. So they bag that up separately, put an X on the bag, and then we deal with it from there. I am not sticking my hands in everything that I pick up. I mean, you can't pay me to do that. It's bad enough you pick it up anyway, but to actually go through all of it, no. No, I'm sorry, I just can't go there.
So there hasn't been any change this 2008 date when you started gathering recycling. You haven't started to do anything different in terms of what you were doing at
Oh,
the
no,
business?
everything's been the same for years. And the dumpsters, that's not mine, number one, I'm sorry. It's wood, it's metal, by a different company.
Who runs that? It's on the property.
Right, that'd be Eagle Disposal. He's also a property owner.
And how long have they run that business?
I couldn't answer that. I don't know.
Those are all the questions I had.
Anybody else have any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. On the TDS bill, it shows B&B disposal at PO Box 1582.
Yes.
And on the tax record, it's showing PO Box 1782.
That changed when the post office moved. They got rid of 200 P.O. boxes. Matter of fact, Mr. Broker might be able to help with that. He can tell you everybody's P.O. box in town.
And you're not the owner of Eagle Disposal then?
I am the owner of B&B Disposal,
No,
yes.
Eagle. You said Eagle?
Oh, Eagle, no, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not.
Do Eagle lease the land from you, or what's the business arrangement between you and Eagle, if you're the landowner?
I am not a landowner.
Okay.
My husband is a landowner along with his son.
Okay. So, to the best of your knowledge, what is the arrangement between Eagle and the landowners?
He pays the commercial tax out there. He doesn't have to pay anything every month. My goodness, that's your son. He's slowly stepping into his father's shoes.
Okay.
So we were proud.
So Eagle is the son.
Yes.
Does he have a business license in the city of Laverne?
Oh, yes. Well, in the city of Laverne, that I don't know. He lives in Smyrna, so I don't know.
Any other questions by board members? Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Would the board members like to have an open conversation or discussion of these items between the board members? Any comments?
I have some questions for staff also, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Would it be all right to do that now?
Yes.
Mr. Santel, is it my understanding correctly that the business can change ownership and still maintain legal nonconforming use status?
Yes.
Okay. Can it expand?
Yes.
Are there any stipulations on the expansion?
Can you be more specific than that?
I mean, within the boundaries of the property, can they expand the business? So they could they add, I don't know anything about disposal. Could they add extra disposal units? Could they park more trucks?
They can continue to operate the business. I don't think there's a limitation on the expansion as long as it's the continuous business.
Okay. And Mr. Beard, to your understanding, are there any code violations at the property?
Part of what this process is about. If they're grandfathered in, then they predate any of the city's ordinances.
So let's say they are grandfathered in. Are there any violations if it's legal non-conforming use? Are they doing anything they shouldn't be doing?
There's nothing I don't think we'd be able to get them with.
Okay.
the cars, the other stuff, it would all be part of the legal non-conforming use and the grandfather status. It
Okay.
predates our ordinances.
Okay.
Let me clarify that question just for my edification. If they were grandfathered in and it was a legal operation for a salvage yard and a garbage company, in those capacities, are there any code violations out there?
They're running the business out of the house, so they're not necessarily open to consumer use. So that'd really be the only thing you could go after. I mean, you know, going into their offices and seeing what's going on, doing a life safety inspection, something along that lines.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Any other comments?
Mr. Coates, can I ask you one?
Sure.
Can you be more specific about the discrepancies you saw in the tax? You're concerned about that?
Sure. Look in your packet, and you go to the property tax information. It references the map, CTL, and GP and parcel. Basically the properties. If you look at Bona, Joe et al., Joe Bona for 2010, it gives map 28, number 10, it gives you different parameters there within it. If you look at the other one, it appears to be a different location, although the property address shows as the same.
So, sorry, I didn't catch the first one where you're looking.
So on the first one, Bona, Joe et al., Joe Bona Jr. So it says real at the top, so I'll put in real estate, and it gives the map. I'm just ensuring that we're referring to the same properties here.
Right.
Because one has a P.O. box and one has the 237 Cheney. And it may be because of the address shows us 237, 245.
Right. I mean, all the documents from the city show that same map 28, 10, and 11.
Well, if you go, we're really looking at their application for what they're referring to on the application. I was just clarifying which one it was.
Okay.
They're identifying on the application of 237 Cheney Boulevard.
Okay.
I have some comment to make also. And the city has already determined that they should cease and desist operating the salvage yard and the disposal, the garbage disposal there. Therefore, it's, in my opinion, it's the onus to rest with the person who is rendering the appeal to show preponderance of evidence why it should be approved, whether it be grandfathered or not. And in my opinion, they have not done that. It's my understanding that this board is really a judicial process. We may or may not be attorneys, we may or may not judges, we're lay people from the community, using the best knowledge that we have. And the best knowledge that I can use is documentation. And what bothers me is that there's no documentation either available within the city or by the appellant here to prove that it is grandfathered in. And that's what bothers me the most. I appreciate the comments from the community as to about the people and that they're good people, and I understand that. But to me, that's not pertinent because this is a legal issue of whether it's legal to operate or not legal to operate. Whether or not they bought the houses before or after that is also not pertinent because it's a legal issue whether they are grandfathered in to operate or not operate. And there has not been a preponderance of evidence to prove that it is grandfathered in. We have to kind of use a little judgment here. For example, on the affidavit here, for example, it refers to the previous mayor that his recollection. I can tell you as a senior citizen, my recollection is not always accurate. So I'm to me, I'm skeptical about that. Also, we have the TDS billing here. It says a control date of 1987. There's no one here from TDS to say what that control date really means. It might mean something entirely different. Therefore, it is my opinion that it is not a legal entity, a legal operation, and those are my reasons for it. I'd appreciate any comments you may have in reference to that, though.
I think your assessment of the question is exactly right. It's whether or not it was in operation prior to the zoning, and if it was, then it's a legal non-conforming use. I haven't seen any evidence that it wasn't in operation. I think the evidence, the fact that they've applied for licenses and been, we have at least back to 1998. None of the residents, I mean, we haven't heard anybody say that it was not in operation. No one's made that case at all. And based on that and the evidence we do have, and I appreciate the skepticism, I think we should be skeptical, but these are legal affidavits. Certainly they could be questioned. I agree with you, I don't have any idea what the control date means. So I won't take that one into account, but I just see no evidence that it was not in operation prior to the zoning, and also no evidence that it stopped for 30 months. And given those things,
I would agree with you, but there also is no positive evidence that it has been in operation since the 1960s.
we have the satellite pictures.
Well, the satellite pictures are undated. They could be any date. There's nothing to document. If the photographs were introduced, I think, in a regular court, they would have to have some proof as to when they were taken. Am I right?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily on the document itself.
Okay. So anyhow, that's where I'm coming from, and that's my position on that. So is there any other discussion? I welcome any comments at all from any members. Okay. I will accept a motion to either approve or deny the appeal, and the motion is for solely B&B disposal. Do I hear such a motion?
I will make a motion to accept the appeal that this is legal non-conforming use at B&B disposal.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
There being a motion made and seconded, we will now take a vote, and the vote will be by voice, please. A yay vote means that you are favoring that the appeal be approved. A nay vote means disapproved, denied. Mr. Coates?
Aye.
Mr. Stanfield?
Yes.
Mr. Pollack?
Yes.
Mr. Phillip?
Yes.
And I vote no. The vote being 3-2, the majority rules for B&B disposal, the appeal is approved. I will now accept a motion for the salvage yard, Joe's Place. Let me accept a motion first, either to approve or deny that appeal.
I will make a motion to approve the appeal that this is legal non-conforming use.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a voice vote? Again, a yay will be that it is a legal entity to operate Joe's Place. A nay vote means it is not a legal entity to operate. Mr. Coates?
Nay.
Mr. Stanfield?
Yes.
Mr. Pollack?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
And I vote no. Again, the majority rules, and both of these the appeals are approved. I thank everyone that's here for those two items that's here, and we have another item to consider, and we'll move on to that. Excuse me, gentlemen. Could we, ladies and gentlemen, could we take the discussion out to the hall, please? Thank you. My apologies to the Planning Commission who meets after us. There's going to be a little delay here, but we need to get this business taken care of. Thank you. Now the new business, special exception, commercial use in an I-1 zoning district, property owned, located at 481 Dick Buchanan Street, tax map 14, parcel 67.04. Property owned by Carolyn Dowdy. Applicant is Rafik Alicia. I hope I'm pronouncing that somewhat close. Are there representatives of those parties here this evening?
Sir, the item was withdrawn at the last minute by the applicant.
It is withdrawn. So let the minutes know that it has been withdrawn. There being no other old business or new business, I will entertain a motion to adjourn this board meeting for this evening.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We stand adjourned.
Meeting called to order. The Vergne Planning Commission, November 29th, 2009, regular meeting, 6 p.m., planning number 8. Proper quorum has been determined. We have approval of minutes from October 25th meeting.
Chair, make a motion to accept the minutes as submitted.
Have a motion to accept the minutes as submitted. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Mr. Richardson, what are we going to do? Our other business? Or are we going to go to the old business and come back?
Just take it straight down the agenda.
Okay, we're going to have our other business. Tonight we have our nomination, or our elections and nominations. We have a motion to nominate and elect the chairman for the one-year term. Do I hear a motion for nomination?
Make a motion to continue as the chairman, Mr. Chairman.
Have a motion to continue serving for 1 year. Do I hear a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next motion is nomination and election for vice chairman for your one-year term.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to keep it as is. Mr. Parker has done a wonderful job, if you would accept.
I have a motion for Mr. Parker for vice chairman for one-year term. Do I hear?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Nomination to elect secretary for one-year term. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to nominate Mr. Coates. He's also done a wonderful job for the city.
I have a motion for Mr. Coates for continuation of secretary for one-year term. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to old business. We have a final plat, re-subdivision of Lot 10, Heritage Valley, 9.4 acres, property located at 808 Park Court South, tax map 14N, Group B, parcel 34, and tax map 18C, Group A, parcel 38, R3 zoning district, property owned by Bruce Eckborough and Heritage Valley Homeowners Association. Staff.
Board, Mr. Eichbauer has respectfully asked to defer this once again to the December meeting. He has not been able to establish ownership, so we will not be considering this item tonight with him here.
Okay, we have a deferral. Next, we have new business, bonds and letters of credit. Staff.
Mr. Chairman and board, everyone should have a sheet in front of you. Everything is up to date, and there are a couple in December that will be expiring, which will be McFarland Point 8, 9, 10, and 11, and also Chelsea Estates Phase 2, all of those, I have been in contact with the developer and the bank, and all those will be extended for another year. So everything should be in order.
That being said, do I have any comments from the board?
I'd like to thank everyone for your services last year and wish all of you a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holiday season. And thank you again for serving this community in the capacity that you do. I know this is a tough job, and I just want you to know y'all are very much appreciated.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.